very similar to getting a home loan. They're going to look at a variety of things, such as affordability. Do you have the income to pay for the loan? And the general lending guidelines are very similar to home mortgages. Now, everybody, the big question at this show this year is, what about the subprime market? How has that affected boat loans? It really has to, because boat lending is very conservative anyway. Banks are always going to be a little bit more particular in their credit profiles. The subprime market has not, that was a situation that basically was its own worst enemy, and the banks kept lending money to people who really couldn't afford to pay their loans back anyway, knowing full well that someday they were going to have a problem, and now they haven't. So, generally speaking, when I'm talking today, I'll be talking about loans over $100,000, because most of these catamarans are over $100,000, and we'll look in terms like that. Generally, the banks are going to be looking for 20% down. Terms are going to be to 20 years. And you can take less terms if you like. Occasionally you'll see somebody going 25 or 30 years. That's not the standard, and the average length of boat ownership is, believe it or not, 39 months. People pay the boats off and they get into another boat. So based on the industry, it's 39 months, which isn't a very long time. So you don't want to equate a boat mortgage to a 30-year mortgage on a house, because typically you're going to pay it off, get out of the boat, or get into another boat, or what have you. So you're looking at, again, 20% down, 20-year terms. When we're talking about rates are affected by the treasury market. They're not affected by the prime lending market. So everybody got all excited in the last couple of weeks. Oh, is my loan going to go down? Oh, is my loan going to go down? The Fed's dropping the rates. We're really not affected by that. It's actually working in a reverse curve. When the stock market is a little shaky, people flee into the bond market, which drives the cost of the bonds up, and therefore the cost of our money goes up. When people go back into the stock market, it settles down a little bit and it levels out. Realistically, we've been in about the same rate and range for about 2 years, up and down, maybe half a point. We're not hopeful. We'd all like it if we'd see 4.99 again, but rates right now are in the 6.5% to 7% range. You'll see some boat show specials here and there. The funnel for getting these boat show specials is very narrow. And for planning purposes, when you're looking at, we're looking to buy a boat the next year or so, you want to take a rate that seems to be what the rates have been and plan around that. I tend to quote very high rates when I'm talking to someone who says they're buying a boat a few years out or planning to buy something in the future. I use a factor on a rate try to save some money. The survey gives you a stake in the ground to what you're buying. It gives you that checklist of things that need to be repaired, and that's your baseline to start with your boat that you own and say, I replaced this, I repaired this, I updated, I modified that. So a survey is not only for the bank's purpose and for your purpose for valuation and for condition. The bank needs to have that for their collateral, but it gives you a stake in the ground moving forward. If the banks want surveys done by a NAMS or SAMS surveyor, which is National American Marine Surveyors or Society of American Marine Surveyors. Often these boats are down in the Caribbean. There are a lot of good Caribbean surveyors that also have other accreditation from a lot of the European guidelines. That works too, but you don't want somebody from the local Coast Guard auxiliary saying, I'll give you your boat a survey and write a report and think that the bank is going to buy it. Again, much of it for the bank is they don't really, I can't say they don't read the surveys, they often do. They need to verify what's in their collateral portfolio. If for some reason they need to do an audit or they go through a merger or an acquisition or what have you, basically they're going to need to know what they have in their portfolio. So there's two reasons to have a survey. Again, one issue with some of these boats being in foreign and faraway places is you can't find a good surveyor.